Okay, hi everybody, and thanks so much for joining us. I am so glad to have you here as we chat with the Butterfly, a World AI Arthritis Day conversation. We are here during World Autoimmune and Autoinflammatory Arthritis Day and looking to talk with a few people who are living with AI arthritis conditions. And we're going to talk about how these conditions affect us and what we're doing about it, how we share our stories, and what that really ends up, what that can do for us, both as the writers and as the people reading it. So first off, I am Kerry, also known as the Butterfly from Float Like a Butterfly. I am excited to be here chatting with two incredible people who are living with these diseases, advocating on behalf of our community. First up is Demeshia Montgomery. Demi is a professional patient who is the CEO of the Waiting Room Entertainment. She is a president of the Patient Senate at Patients Rising and an ambassador and captain for Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation and COPD Foundation. And she's involved in many other organizations supporting advocacy efforts. So Demi is definitely busy. But can you tell us, what is the Waiting Room Entertainment?
The Waiting Room Entertainment is an organization that we put together as patients. We wanted to create an environment that was a safe space for patients to come together and have some fun and learn at the same time. So what we do is we provide resources that we have vetted and also that have items or services that are very good for the patient community. So a lot of freebies, a lot of things that may be of use, a lot of services that are very accessible for patients to use. And then it's also a space where we can advocate together.
That sounds really, really wonderful, and just what we all need. Also joining us today is Jim, James Kuhn. Jim and I have been fortunate to get to know Jim and his wonderful wife, Jean, through our advocacy that we've done with the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research. Jim has been a rock star advocate. He's a speaker, he's a writer, he's a mentor. And of course, what I like best is that he is a friend. And so, Jim, if you could say hi, tell us a little of what you've got going on.
Hi, folks. Thanks for joining in today. I've cut back a little bit on my activities this year due to constant states of flare up, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate to. But I'm still staying active in my advocacy work with patients and with legislators, and I also have been speaking at a few conferences. So I'm trying to stay busy and trying to stay in touch with the industry and doing my part to move the needle forward a little bit.
All right, thank you, Jim. That's great. And then, of course, there's me. I am a writer and patient advocate. I generally go by Float Like a Butterfly is what I use for all of my advocacy. I have, let's see, I first found out about AI arthritis back in 2011 after too many years of doctors not knowing what was wrong with me. They eventually said, you have some kind of arthritis, it's probably autoimmune, and it was kind of left at that. So of course I went to search right away, and AI arthritis was the first thing I found, and I have been involved with them on and off in various different capacities over the years since then. You may have actually heard me or seen me in the AI Arthritis Voices 360 talk show that we put out every month. I am one of the co-hosts that speaks with some of those. And, you know, it's looking for, you know, the ways, like Jim said, you know, the ways that we can stay connected, the things that we can do. One of the things I am most excited and proud about is my most recent project. It's a book called Kaleidoscope Rare Disease Stories. And we will talk about that in a little bit. But first, I want to just kind of get to know Jim and Demi a little bit more. So, Demi, I know you have scleroderma, which is one of the conditions that falls under the AiArthritis umbrella. Can you tell us a little bit about scleroderma and how that affects you?
Scleroderma has affected me a lot. It is an autoimmune disease that actually where the body attacks itself. So there's a lot of tightening of the skin. There's a lot of damage to the internal organs. So it has affected me because I'm actually an amputee because of it. I've lost 6 fingers, 1 toe, and have a lot of calcifications from on my knees and elbows that leaves me with limited range of motion. So I can't extend my arms certain degrees, and I can't move around the way that I would like to anyway. And then I have the claw hand that also comes from that.
That all sounds really difficult. And Jim, now, as I said before, you have sarcoidosis, which is, how I got to meet you. But you were saying earlier, you were telling me you also have, was it RA, and there were a couple others. I know we've all got like really long lists.
In addition to sarcoidosis, which is an inflammatory autoimmune disorder, I also have rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, Sjogren's, crest, which is a variant of scleroderma, and a couple other rare autoimmune disorders. But like most patients who have autoimmune, it's kind of hard differentiating between them all because they all affect different the body in different ways, but overlap as well. For example, I have sarcoidosis started in my lungs, which I was later diagnosed with interstitial lung disease, but that's also a byproduct of my advanced rheumatoid arthritis as well as crest. And so when I have trouble breathing, it's hard for me to tell the doctors what's going on. So
Yeah, it's definitely difficult when there's so much overlap, both in terms of the symptoms and in terms of comorbidities. So, the other conditions that are very common alongside the AiArthritis conditions that we have. And Demi, you also have ILD, interstitial lung disease?
Yes. So I have pulmonary fibrosis, and then I also have COPD.
That's just, I think each one of us has a list that is just way, way, way too long. But it's one of the things I think that helps us connect to each other that much more. I'll say, for example, when I was first diagnosed, or there's a really, really long period of trying to be diagnosed. As I said, originally it was actually 4 years of doctors telling me there was nothing wrong. And once they finally said some kind of arthritis, probably autoimmune, that was basically what I lived with for a long time after that. I switched to a different doctor, a different rheumatologist, and she and I spent 4 years in rotating misdiagnoses, because the symptoms that I was living with, I had rashes, I had swollen, painful joints, I had muscle aches, I had severe fatigue. And I think like everybody is kind of shaking your head because, these things are so common for so many of us. And when I first discovered AiArthritis, one of the projects they were working on actually was related to that specifically. We were working on an early symptom study, and that was actually part of how they determined what fell under the category of autoimmune or autoinflammatory conditions, arthritis conditions, because it was this group of conditions that all a very, very similar presentation, very, very similar symptoms, similar etiology, but little bits different. And so, it was all kind of within the same family. And I know for me, it was helpful to get some of that understanding, to kind of offset the frustration that I had from lack of answers that I was getting from doctors. So it's like they didn't really say much, and they didn't say why they didn't say much. And so at least, learning other things, connecting with other patients, and organizations, that's where I was really able to learn most of what I know, about all of these conditions. And part of that, one of the things that I think is just so funny, is my current rheumatologist, who I believe is number 9 for me, but I love her. And she said to me, after we were going through all of these different things, she said, "I am going to diagnose you with autoimmune soup." And that was kind of, she explained how I have this kind of soup base that is the sarcoidosis, say for instance, and I've got a little bit of RA and a little bit of Sjogren's and a little bit of all these other things that all kind of swirl around together to become what's happening in my body. And so we've all kind of got these little bits of swirls and these different kind of broth. And so we get to see how much is similar, but also how much is, is different among the bunch of us, where we find the differences and where we find the similarities. And I think that, because it is through making those connections and finding each other that we learn so much. That's why I want to talk about the book that I mentioned earlier. And that is, it's called Kaleidoscope, Rare Disease Stories. And what it is it is a collection of stories, true stories, first person stories from people who are living with all different kinds of rare diseases. And so we were able to bring together 47 different writers, that represented 59 different rare diseases. And again, this is people of all ages, of all races, of all genders, of all everything, because although there are some conditions that might be featured more in one demographic than another, to an extent, anybody can get one of these. And, so as much as they may be different, we're actually able to see a lot of similarity in our experience. And, for me, I find that validating, especially after all of the years of being told that it was all in my head. And this actually was, the idea for this book was actually, I am a total copycat. I will say it 100%. I give credit to Effie. I apologize if I'm saying her name wrong. Effie Koliopoulos. She goes by Rising Above RA. And in 2022, she came out with a book that was a collection of stories written by people with all different forms of arthritis. And she had asked me about writing, and I wrote one of the stories. And so it's, in case I didn't say it yet, it's called Keeping It Real with Arthritis, Stories from Around the World. And one of the other things that's great about that book is proceeds were donated to AiArthritis, to help support the great work that they do for all of us. And when I read the book, when I was asked to write it, I was honored. When I shared it and when I read some of the other stories, I swear I gave myself whiplash from all of the nodding that I was doing, because it was so relatable and there was so much that I was going through, that was like what other people had written about. And I thought that, this was so powerful and so important. And it was something that was really lacking in the rare disease community. And so I decided I want to put it out there. And so I was able to reach out to patients and organizations focused on rare diseases and bring this together. And I am so proud of it. I am so excited. I am so honored and grateful for all of the people who shared their stories with us. And two of the people, well, I guess three if you include me, but everyone on this call right now has shared a story of theirs and how they are affected by, live with, deal with the diseases that they have. And so I'm going to start with Demi. Demi wrote a piece called Never Give Up. And I would love if you could read a little bit of that, share that with us, and we'll talk about it after.
Okay, so the part I chose to for my excerpt is near the end of it, because I like this part. It kind of gives the why of why I wanted to be a part of the book. So I tell you this story to share how a disease so horrible can be a gift at the same time. Over the years, I have learned to turn my grief, frustrations, and fear into motivation. Now at age 42 and newly diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis and COPD as well, I'm determined to help bring awareness and advocate for research funding for rare diseases. I pray that the newly diagnosed patients will have more information, treatments, and knowledge available than I did when I began my journey. If sharing my story comforts even one person, then all the pain was worth it. I would like others to know it is not a death sentence, but an opportunity to experience life in a different way. So, Kerry, that's the part I chose. I think that kind of sums up a good reason why to participate in this.
Yeah, it's powerful. And, when we're able to see the strength in ourselves and also help inspire others with it, that is where the patient community is just vital for any of us going through this. And so I thank you for sharing that. And Jim has written a piece called Living in My Box. And it's a very cool way of kind of prioritizing things in his life. And so I would love it, Jim, if you can share some of that.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry. As part of dealing with my disease, I worked along with my therapist and family to come up with this tool that I call my box. And every day I try to fill my box with something that's fulfilling, a bunch of things that are fulfilling for me, based on my capabilities for the day. So I try to just work up to my own abilities and not anybody else's standards. And I have found this to be a great tool. So I wrote near the end, like Demi. Now, like most rare disease patients, my life is not a bed of roses. In fact, it's quite difficult. Every day seems to bring new diagnosis, a new pain, or a new hassle with insurance companies. I wake up every day knowing that I will be fatigued, in pain, and fighting depression. And that's just the start of the day. And like 95% of rare disease patients, my illnesses do not have a cure or FDA-approved treatment plan, so I'm left to try off-label medications that were designed for other diseases and may or may not help mine. This is a constant spinning of the wheel that to try new drugs to see what might work, and balancing the efficacy with often side effects that are huge. Every day brings its own set of challenges and hurdles when you live with a rare disease. My wife and I have learned to live in the day, choosing to make each day the best day ever, however we can. Over the past 12 years of living with my rare diseases, I've learned a lot of coping skills and developed a lot of tools to manage to not only survive, but to thrive as a rare disease patient. And I know that using these tools, it allows me to look past the hurdles and challenges that are present in my life every day and get on with life with something that's productive and fulfilling. So I encourage everybody to read my story as well as others, and try to live their best day ever every day.
That is really wonderful. And it's so just what we need to do. I mean, I know that I personally have, after reading the story, I have emailed Jim and said, I just did this and this was in my box today. And it really is just it's a way of putting things into perspective and thinking about who we are and what we're going through and what we need and what brings us joy, um, and finding a way to, whatever the box is for you, however big, however small, however varying it may be, to have in there what really matters, and find a way to work through that, I think is terrific. So I'm going to ask you both. I'll start with Demi. What kind of response have you gotten from, and has anybody said to you, "Oh, I read your story," and
Oh yes. So I've gotten a lot of responses that everybody that has bought the book loves the book. They love that it is actually supporting Nord. They love that it is includes so many stories and so many different perspectives. And they really, the main thing I've heard was that they just couldn't believe the pain that some of these people were going through and the outlook that they had, even though they were going through the pain. And so it was it's a very motivational book, is what I'm hearing.
that's really great. And that just makes my heart happy. Um, and Jim, have you heard anything from people? What kind of response have you gotten?
It's obviously, I like to focus on my story, and I've gotten feedback that people have found that very helpful, and they're going to start creating their own box. But even more so, what the resounding thing I've heard is, by reading the other stories, people have really gotten a handle on what it's like to live with a rare disease, and what the challenges and burdens are, and how people all over the world are coping with living with rare diseases.
Yes, definitely. And so we're able to hear other perspectives and see how people manage and see the struggles and see, um, I think one of the greatest things for me in reading Effie's book, with the arthritis stories, and reading the stories that were submitted to me for this one, is it's that me too. That idea that not any one of us, no matter how isolated, how lonely we might feel, and how much we might think that nobody understands what we are going through, that we are not alone. And through the books and through the stories and through the organizations and through the advocates, we each get to see that what we are going through. And you know what? I will be the first to say it sucks. This is not a club that anybody would want to join. But if you have to be in it, there is just such an amazing and incredible support and validation and inspiration and comedic at times, sometimes even with a warped humor, such a community, such a family, that it really just, it in some ways, as much as I say I'm a writer and I can write and share everything, I feel like there aren't words to fully cover how much we need this community and how great it is to have the people in it. And so, sort of bouncing off of that, Demi, I know that with the Waiting Room Entertainment, you have a social event coming up. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yes, we are going to do our social club in Las Vegas again this year. It's going to be August 5th. We are still determining the location. So I'll come out later and tell you guys that, but you can always visit us on our website. It's the waitingroomentertainment.com.
Okay, awesome. And so, as we're talking about this and sharing these stories, and I think the more that we hear, the more that we want, the more that we get, the more that we need. And so that's one of the other reasons why being a part of this community is so important, because we can continually, every day is another experience. Every minute is another feeling. And, to be able to continually share those and learn from them and see how we have changed from when we were first diagnosed to now, how we have dealt with all of the highs and lows that have come our way. And so because of that, I, have been inspired to not only create this Kaleidoscope book after seeing Effie's, but to make this actually a series. And so over the next few years, and I am giving myself no timeline on this because I know that, and you all understand that living with all of these health conditions, these disabilities and things that just get in our way in every way possible, it's not always easy to meet a tight deadline. I did for this first one just because symbolically I wanted to be able to publish on Rare Disease Day, because it was this first book about and by and for people with rare diseases. But moving on, I want to continue this to other conditions, other types of conditions, other groups. And you may find that you or someone kind of fits into more than one of these categories, and cares about someone who fits into another one, and knows someone who fits in another one, and thinks they might be in another one, or all of the above. And so I could tell you, like for me, I think this is probably one that our audience here for World AI Arthritis Day might be most familiar with, is the idea of invisible illnesses. And that's, we all know what it's like to hear that, oh, but you look good, oh, but you don't look sick, and how crushing that can be, and dismissive. And although people mean well, there's just a whole world of experience, and not only from hearing that, but just living in a world, in a body that doesn't look the way it feels, can be really, really difficult. And so my next book, our next up in the Kaleidoscope series, is going to focus on stories from people with invisible illnesses. Coming after that will be stories from people with disabilities. We've all got stories from that time when we were undiagnosed or misdiagnosed. I know I can tell you, as I said, 4 years of rotating misdiagnoses before we got to figure out that what I had was primarily sarcoidosis, a rare disease that, most people don't understand and don't know and don't, most haven't even heard of. But as a part of that disease, it is an inflammatory condition, as Jim mentioned earlier. And so that causes the inflammatory arthritis and a whole lot of other symptoms, all of which are invisible. And so, I have this invisible illness. It has been disabling for me, and for a lot of other people. And so their next book will be focused on that disability stories. Sorry, I think I passed that and I'm jumping back again. But we will also have a book focused on all those misdiagnoses and all that time of struggling to get a diagnosis, knowing that something is wrong and not knowing what. There will be another book down the line focused on mental health, and that is whether the only issue, and I don't say that to be dismissive, but just the only health condition that you have is a mental illness, this will be the book for you. If you have 100 other physical illnesses that living with them can lead you to be depressed and anxious, and how many other conditions, if they're unrelated but you just have them, we all have issues with mental health and with how life brings us down and how we can get through it, how we can manage. And once I've gone through all of that, I will be coming back full circle to more rare disease stories. So if you are living with any health condition that falls under any of these categories, if you think that you've got a story to tell and you would like to help share it, I would love for you to, stay tuned, stick around, and we will be able to, I would love for you to find out, when the next book is coming up and how you'll be able to be a part of it. And with that, I just want to take a moment to say thank you again one more time so much. Thank you to Demi of the Waiting Room Entertainment and so many other things. You can see her email here at thewaitingroomentertainment@gmail.com, or you can find information at thewaitingroomentertainment.com. To Jim for coming in and sharing so much. You can find him on Facebook at jim.kuhn16.16. You can find him on Instagram at ohsarkwarrior, and you can find him on LinkedIn at Jim Kuhn, Ohio. And then there's me, and I just have too many different links to give. So you can find me most easily at the link tree is Buttahfly K. You can scan that QR code in the corner of your screen, and that will bring you to my link tree, which includes all of the links for Kaleidoscope and Float Like a Butterfly and all of the great things that we are working on. And you can also email me at floatlikeabutterfly@gmail.com. Just one quick note, you may see I did not misspell. It's not an error. I am from New York. I spell it like we say it. It is Buttah fly, because I float like a butterfly, and I would love for all of you to float with me. And with that, I just want to give Demi and Jim a chance, if you want to, any final words, you want to say anything else to our audience. Demi?
Great. Oh, go ahead, Jim.
I'm sorry, Demi, go ahead.
Kerry, I'd like to say thank you so much for creating this book and allowing me to be a part of it. This was a very comforting experience. So I truly appreciate what you've done, and to take this on is a big task, but you were able to do it, and I want to give you your applause for that. And for everybody else, you are not alone. Anytime you need someone, just remember that there's a whole community out here waiting to support you.
That is absolutely, Demi, thank you so much for your kind words. You've got me blushing here, but I do appreciate it. And yes, no one here is alone. And Jim.
Echoing Demi's thoughts, thanks, Kerry, for creating this forum and the Rare Disease Kaleidoscope series. It was an honor to be a part of it, and I look forward to being part of future endeavors. And I'll say it again, you're not alone. These diseases will try to isolate you, and so get involved with some community or another, and find your fellowship and comfort there.
All right, absolutely. I have no better words than that. So thank you all once again. And we look forward to seeing you after this. Have a great, wonderful day.
Great day.